Good morning, everyone. We'll be starting in 1 minute. We'll be starting in 1 minute. Thanks. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to this month's legislative webinar. And thank you for being flexible. I know this is on a weird day. We usually have the webinar on Tuesday, but we're having it on Wednesday today. So we thank you for tuning in this morning. This is JP Dorval, the Manager of Legislative Affairs and Administrative Services here at Prevention Action Alliance, and we actually have a full house today. With us, we have our Executive Director, Marcie Seidel, our Communications Manager, Nathan Kraatz, and this is a mouthful, but our Director of Problem Gambling Prevention and Project Manager of Special Projects, James Syphax. So full house, we got a couple things that we're going to touch on today. So hopefully it's a good conversation. So Nathan, I'm just going to pass it along to you. Talk about vaping illnesses.
Thanks, JP. Just wanted to provide a few little updates. First, the vaping illnesses that have been sweeping across the country continue to this day. More than 1,080 people have fallen ill, and 18 people have died from illnesses related to vaping. The FDA is now coming out clearly and suggesting that people refrain from vaping products that contain THC. That said, 70% of the products that have been tested by the FDA contain THC. Half of those, about 35% of the overall sample, contain vitamin E acetate, which is harmful to the lungs. One other thing that just came across in my news feed this week is that poison control centers are at the same time seeing increases in reports of children ingesting or drinking liquid nicotine. Seems to be going up substantially. I saw several hundred more calls per year. Medical News Today reported that e-cigarettes are responsible for the vast majority of nicotine poisoning cases, which is not surprising because the format is perfect for that. One other thing on vaping illnesses, the FDA is expected to finalize a policy to remove flavored vaping products from the market in just a few weeks, according to the Washington Post. Once that policy is finalized, it would take effect within about 30 days. I think it's important during this time, especially when people are still falling ill, people are still dying. I think it's important that we maintain open lines of communication with our communities, try to feed information to them that is not only helpful and educational, but also actionable. I think at this time, too, it may be appropriate if you're in the line of work to suggest to people that they use an FDA-approved quitting aid rather than something that has not been approved, like e-cigarettes. Separately, some people are trying to do some other things about this. CNN has a report out that Congress is going to see a bill to limit the amount of nicotine that e-cigarette makers can put into their pods or liquids or cartridges. The proposed limit that was floated in the Washington Post story I was reading, or I'm sorry, the CNN story I was reading, was 20 milligrams per liter, which is about a third of what Juul puts in their pods today. Another thing that was very interesting that I think we're going to see more people talking about is that a study that was published in Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences found that 9 out of 40 mice exposed to e-cigarette vapors with nicotine in it developed lung cancer. 20 mice were exposed to e-cigarette smoke without nicotine and did not develop lung cancer. So that creates some argument for the fact that nicotine vapors can in fact give you cancer. They also found some signs of cancerous lesions in the bladder, so it may also contribute to or cause bladder cancer. The study did have a small sample size, and the mice did not inhale the vapors, but instead were surrounded by it. Future research intends to expand the sample size and also change the length of time that mice are exposed to vapors to see if there's an impact on if they're exposed for shorter or longer durations. One other thing I wanted to leave people with is that Walmart and Kroger have decided to stop selling e-cigarettes in the midst of all this news. More and more companies are voluntarily choosing to stop selling various tobacco products, and I think that this is something that any community can build into its advocacy efforts, trying to see what vendors sell e-cigarettes in their community or nicotine or tobacco products, and seeing if they can get them to change their policies to promote health. Especially places like, I know CVS made the big statement about no longer selling any tobacco products. Any kind of place that is involved in promoting your health probably shouldn't sell you nicotine. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Nate. A lot of important information. Before we continue, there was someone who asked about, or who mentioned that they couldn't hear me or couldn't hear whoever was talking. If you can't hear us for some reason, just let me know in the question section so we can address it. But I believe the audio is working now, so just let me know if everything's all good audio-wise. Alrighty, moving on. Bills to watch. So this is pretty much the same list from last webinar, last month. However, if you look at the bottom, you will see House Bill 194, sports gaming. This bill is going to legalize and regulate sports gaming for the state of Ohio. And we have James Syphax, who's our resident expert on all things gambling and gaming, I guess, here to kind of explain where this bill is, what we're advocating for in this bill, and how we should move forward.
Hi, good morning, everybody. This is my first time joining you, so I appreciate the invite from JP and Marcie to speak on this. House Bill 194 is something that was not expected at this time. I think everyone that works in problem gambling saw that sports betting was coming, but we were kind of surprised at the speed at which we saw House Bill 194. There are a few points that we like to make when we talk about House Bill 194. The first is that, as written, the bill would allow gambling in the state of Ohio on any professional, collegiate, sporting event, any motor race, or any special event authorized by the commission that would be part of, created as part of House Bill 194. Our problem is with that first line, that it's any professional or collegiate sporting event. There's a kind of a consortium of experts on this, the NCAA, the Ohio Inter-University Council, the Problem Gambling Network of Ohio, which is our state affiliate for the National Council on Problem Gambling, and even here at Prevention Action Alliance, we've provided written testimony on this and a few other points. We all believe that if sports betting were to be legal, it should only be on professional sports within the United States. Non-professional athletes, be it high school or collegiate athletes, don't have the same means that professional athletes have. That means that they're generally open to they have a greater risk of exploitation, which is things that we've seen in other countries that have legalized sports betting on non-professional sports. So I think we're really putting our young people, our high school and college athletes, at a higher level of risk by allowing people to bet money on their events. As written, House Bill 194 would give the regulation of sports betting to the Ohio Lottery Commission. The Ohio Lottery Commission is a great partner in problem gambling prevention. However, they walk a fine line between sales and regulation. It's the opinion of the governor's office, as well as, again, the Problem Gambling Network of Ohio and Prevention Action Alliance, and several others that have weighed in on this, that any regulation of sports betting in Ohio should be property of the Ohio Casino Control Commission. They are a regulation-only agency and have demonstrated a fine job in the few years that the casinos have been open in being able to regulate games that are both chance-based, but also with a slight level of skill. They can manage those intricacies and how to regulate them, whereas the Ohio Lottery, the products they regulate are strictly a chance-only game. The last point that we like to talk about when we talk about House Bill 194 is that it opens up sports betting, if made legal, to fraternal organizations, veterans clubs, and restaurants. In a few states where sports betting is already legal, Buffalo Wild Wings has become a great partner to the sports betting industry. You can go into restaurants and place wagers on games live from the restaurant. And what these venues lack are resources. Fraternal organizations are usually run by volunteers, restaurants by, staff that are great at what they do, but they're not experts in prevention. In the 4 casinos and 7 racinos we have in Ohio, the gaming properties we have dedicated staff and dedicated resources through the Ohio Lottery Commission and the Ohio Casino Control Commission that can help individuals with problems sign up for the voluntary exclusion program, find treatment resources, all things that would be no longer available with off-site betting. So as we talk about House Bill 194, those are the things that we like to talk about, and hope that you would, join us in talking about these things as we talk about sports betting. And with that, I will hand it back to JP. Thanks.
Awesome, James. Thank you so much for all that information. And if you guys have any questions for James or for myself regarding this bill, just asking in the questions section. James can't be here for the entire time. However, we can send any answers to any questions that you guys have via email. So thank you, James. All right, guys, I'm going to go back to the previous slide very quickly, just to give it a few updates before I move to House Bill 10. House Bill 12 is having a hearing today in the Senate. It will be sponsored testimony for that, so we'll keep you guys updated on how that goes. House Bill 165 and Senate Bill 121, the health education standards bills. The Senate version of this had a hearing last week. I think it was proponent testimony, and I think that went very well. So we'll keep you guys updated on how that moves forward in the coming weeks. And now I will move to House Bill 10. I've had a couple conversations with different people about this bill over the past couple of weeks, and a very enlightening conversation yesterday with a person from our field. And one question that I didn't have an answer to yesterday, but I do have an answer to now is, given all these tasks and all these things that this Office of Drug Policy is meant to do, why don't we take some of these duties and put them in the hands or into the purview of the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services? Did not have an answer to that yesterday, but I did speak to the sponsors today to ask whether this was something they considered, and if so, why they chose to create an entirely new office and send funding into this new office to kind of do all these duties as opposed to leaning on the offices that we already have created. And I was told this morning that this bill and this office will be modeled or is modeled after a few other offices throughout the country that kind of have the same responsibility. And, you know, as prevention folk, we primarily deal with the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. However, there are numerous other departments that touch on drug policy throughout the state. We can think about the Department of Public Safety, the Department of Health, with everything that they're doing on vaping, rehabilitations and corrections, and the list goes on. So ideally, this office would be the coordinator of all those drug efforts, all that drug information, all that drug data that all these offices are kind of pulling from, and will be the end-all, be-all for kind of just the expertise, but also the knowledge and the data that we use as a state. So I mean that kind of answers that question. The sponsors of this bill were worried that if they were to place this in the Department of Public Safety or Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services or the Department of Health, that department would then focus on the data that they usually use when dealing with the drug policy, and would not be as holistic as an entirely new office would be when dealing with these things. So as you can see on your screen, these are the 10 responsibilities outlined in the bill for this new office. There was proponent testimony last week on this bill, and Prevention Action Alliance gave testimony as a supporter of this bill. And this week there is proponent, opponent, and interested party testimony. So it's the third hearing in the Senate. I do know that sponsors are meeting with the governor's office next week to kind of discuss this and have any final details that need to be hashed out. And I do believe that this bill could pass out of the Senate and be enacted by the first of the year or by early next year. So keep an eye out on that, but that's where we are right now. We truly believe that this bill is a good bill. Obviously, like any other office, it has the potential to be helpful, but also has the potential to be a bit disruptive depending on the office culture and things like that. But on paper, in theory, this bill is a great bill, and we're hoping that the resources that this newly created office is tasked with providing can benefit everyone locally and can really bring a sense of cohesiveness to how we attack our addiction issue at the state. So I will move forward to Marcie's segment.
Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful fall day here, and I hope it is where you are as well. There isn't much to update on the medical marijuana control program. There have been basically the cultivator piece of it has remained the same, but we've had one additional dispensary open, so we're now up to 31 of the 56 that will open in the state of Ohio. So it's slowly moving along and coming together. Next slide. We have also sales figures coming in, and I'm trying to keep you abreast of how it changes from month to month, and we can see that the pounds of plant material that become available and sold since the beginning of January has increased. We're up to now more than 3,800 pounds of raw plant material, which is a lot of material. And also units of manufactured products have really gone up as well. So we're up to over 114,000 units of manufactured products. Product sales, again, continues to go as we see that it's up around $31.7 million. That's an interesting piece with only 31 dispensaries open and still 56 more, or the goal of having 56 open. So it'll be interesting to see how the sales volume goes. But we also know that once more dispensaries are open, the chances are the price of the product will come down because, again, we have the same market forces in play here, is that when it's more scarce, prices go up. When it's more plentiful, prices do come down. So we'll be tracking that to see how that goes. That's one of the things that continues to be a complaint among those who are purchasing product out of the dispensaries, is that it's awfully expensive. But it's important to keep in mind that it's also product in this day and age that has been tested, and we know what's in it compared to what may be found on the streets or on the black market. And today, so many things are being cut into different drugs that it's certainly worth the price for those who truly need it for health reasons to go to a dispensary. And part of what we need to do in the industry and the Medical Marijuana Advisory Commission is to encourage people, if they need this or feel they need this and they do have a card, they need to go to a dispensary. Total receipts, as we can see right there, is growing a great deal. Here again, this is always a good benchmark of what's happening in the state of Ohio, with the recommendations now being up to more than over 62,000. Registered patients is up to 63,000. We have veterans that are listed there, which continues to climb, as does patients with the indigent status, as well as those with terminal disease. Again, out of all of those registered patients of more than 63,000, only 363 are indicated to have a terminal diagnosis, which I always think is a very interesting piece of data to look at and scrutinize. Registered caregivers additionally are going up to more than 6,000 at this point. And then the number of unique patients who've actually purchased marijuana, again, an interesting point, data point where those are the unique patients versus the 63,000 that actually have it. So you have more than 23,000 patients who are registered but are not purchasing the product in the dispensary. So lots of reason to kind of figure out what that's all about, and I would hope that we can get a little bit more information on it. They're not collecting specific data around that, but we do know that it has perhaps things to do with not being able to get to a dispensary to get it, and also it could be that people are purchasing it not in a dispensary at this point. Physicians, each month there is a new cohort of physicians who are getting their CTRs, that's Certificate to Recommend. We're up now to 561 in the state of Ohio. They are concentrated mainly in the 3 Cs of Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, although they are some dispersed throughout the state. But the majority of them were within those areas, metropolitan areas. And they will continue to grow as time goes on. One of the things, and so that's the update pretty much about the medical marijuana program, but we realize now in the state that we have medical marijuana that is legal. We have hemp that's now legal. We have CBD oil that is now legal. We have FDA approved cannabis medications, which is Epidiolex, which is now legal in the state of Ohio. And there's a lot of confusion around what all of those things do, what they are, how they're made up. It's just a massive confusing state, because this industry is coming out far ahead of what we as a society and rules and regulations are trying to keep up with. So one of the things we're doing here at Prevention Action Alliance is trying to create and look at assembling a group that's called MAP, which is Marijuana Awareness Project. We feel it's really important that we start getting information out about it. This needs to be a very diverse coalition from our perspective. We need to help provide facts, true, accurate facts, to help people make good decisions about this growing and changing market. And we understand and realize from our prevention lens that each community needs to find a way to get into that community to hit the chord that they will be able to hear and act upon the information that they receive, that they're getting it a culturally sensitive way. And we also really overarchingly want to make sure that keeping children and pregnant moms healthy and safe is of the utmost importance right now. All people need to be healthy and safe, but right now we're watching what's happening in other states, that it's children, young adults, and pregnant moms who are the highest at risk for not making good decisions or having accidental exposure to cannabis products. So our educational awareness project is moving forward very slowly. We are looking to identify groups, diverse groups that are interested in a common goal of getting that accurate information out there, and we will keep you posted as how that's going. We've met once as a very small group, and we'll be continuing to grow that group. So if you have any feedback or interest, let us know, JP or myself. And also, one of the things that we want to do is think about in your communities and with the people that you interact with, what is the most important information or misinformation out there that needs to be corrected? We're interested in hearing about that. And so if you want to even jot that into the type text into the webinar even today, we'd appreciate it, or contact us. We're trying to find out what the most important fact is that's not, or misinformation that's out there. For example, one of the things that I have heard is that people don't believe that there's THC in medical marijuana, that in fact is a completely benign substance that will not intoxicate you. And that certainly isn't the case. That's one misleading fact that we have. Another misleading fact is that no one has ever died from marijuana. The correct way of saying that is no one has ever died from an overdose, although I think that could be disputed now. But that's basically what it is. No one's ever died from an overdose, but plenty of people have died as a result of marijuana use. And so I think we need to keep that in perspective. So those are just a couple of things that we've heard here. We are really interested in trying to understand what's going on in the different communities in the state of Ohio about what those perceptions and untrue information that's been disseminated out there. So that's all that I have at this point. Look forward to hearing back from you because you're all valuable to helping us do the work that we do here, and we appreciate your engagement really very, very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marcie. And on that note, we do have one listener who wrote that the use of marijuana-based products in the workplace is an area that we might want to look at, how that affects drug tests, impairs function, and the legal questions related to that. That might be something that we want to delve into as this project moves forward. And in addition, we're going to go back to House Bill 194 very quickly. Our listener asked, how can we advocate locally and educate people on House Bill 194, and also asked if there are any resources or campaigns that people can run regarding House Bill 194. When it comes to the resources and campaigns, I'm going to have to touch base with James, and I can definitely send anything we find or collect out to the entire group via email afterwards. When it comes to the advocacy piece of it, really advocacy and education go hand in hand. The best way to advocate, obviously, is to make sure that your voice is heard at the state level. So educating people in your community about House Bill 194, the ins and outs of it, and then having them send emails to their legislators about it. Given that it's in the Senate right now, probably focus on senators. I can send out the contact info for the sponsors of the bill, and can also send out the information on who is sitting on the committee that's hearing that bill. But yeah, that's pretty much the best way to advocate for it. Make sure your voice is heard at the state level and educate people locally on what make sure people understand locally that this is a bill that is currently being heard, that it's moving quickly, and that they should reach out to their senators to make sure that their voices as constituents are heard regarding this topic. But when it comes to the resources and campaigns, I will send that out to the entire group after I touch base with James. So it looks like we're at the end of our presentation, or at the end of this webinar. I'm going to wait a couple minutes to see if any other questions trickle in. But other than that, after the next couple of minutes, probably 2 to 3 minutes, we'll wrap it up. And to answer another question that just rolled in, yeah, I can also send a follow-up email with links to the info that Nathan shared about vaping illness. So I'll touch base with him on that. I'll have him send that to me, and I'll definitely send that your way. So thank you for that. All right, well, it looks like that's it in terms of questions. So I just want to thank you guys again for tuning in. If you guys have any questions regarding anything we discussed today, feel free to give me a call. Our number is on the screen, 614-540-9985. My extension is 22, so feel free to give me a call. I'm open to talking to any of you guys about really anything that we discussed. And really, the more conversations we have about this stuff, the better we can get a better understanding about, where our priorities are and what issues may arise and stuff like that. So thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next time.